Hello, welcome to Steve McDonald's Arts and Crafts, and what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you how to make one of the druzy molds. Now, I've had a lot of requests for this, and it's actually really simple. It doesn't take long, and it's easy to make, and you don't need much for it. So, firstly, I start off with some crystals, and what I'm going to be using is, I'm just going to be using these doorstep defroster crystals, because as you can see, they come out, and they're quite nice and large crystals. And the second thing I'm going to be using is some Epsom salt crystals. You'll need some acetate, some varnish, and of course some silicone to make the mold with. So all I'm going to do to start with is I'm just going to spread out some of these crystals on here, but I want to keep the larger ones where this is concerned. So I'm just going to give it a bit of a shake. That should separate off the larger crystals. Put my hand on it, that'll bring out the larger crystals, move them to one side, and then pour the rest of this back in to the pot. And then the other thing I'm going to do is scatter on some of these lovely Epsom salt crystals. So now what I'm going to do is pop these on here as well. I've got all the crystals on the actual acetate now. And the reason that you want it on a piece of acetate is because I'm now going to spray it with this clear crystal clear sprayer. It's a gloss varnish, and if you want your druzy mold to have a shiny finish, then you need to make it using something that's shiny to start with. Now, there are lots of different ones of this out there, and I'll link several in the description so that you know which ones that you can use. You just need to give it a good shake. And then what I'll do is I will just spray it on here over the crystals, giving it a good kind of first coat, and then I will let that cure, and then once it's dry I'll give it a couple more coats, and that will make those nice and shiny. These have all dried now, and I decided I didn't want the red bits in there. I took them out. I didn't think they were a very nice shape. And this is the first method I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you two methods on how to make a druzy mold. So I'm just going to, where they've stuck to the acetate, pull them off. As you can see, they've got a nice glossy finish. So what we need to do now is we need to make the mold. Now what I've got is I use these disposable beer mugs, and I use them for so many different things, and I use them up as I go along. I've cut the top off of one of these to the rim, and I will link them in the description below, because when this druzy mold is finished, I want it to fit nicely into this coaster mold. So if I pop that in there, that'll fit nicely in there, but still give me a rim around the edge. So that is going to be the mold that I make my actual silicone mold in. And I'm going to attach it to here, to this piece of PVC, using some hot glue. That's all I'm going to use for this. That's all nice and sealed on there now, so I'm not worried about that. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop a layer of these in here. So I'm quite happy with that, and I'm quite happy with that layer. And now all I'm going to do is spray a quick spray of mold release into there. I've got my silicone mixed up, and so all I'm going to do is pour it on. Now don't make it too thick, you literally just want it to cover the actual druzy itself, because you don't want it too big when you're putting it inside your coaster mold. So you just want it to be able to cover up the actual crystals themselves. I will link into the description a silicone that you can use. I'll link the one I use, and also another one as well, as it can be quite expensive, but actually you do save quite a lot of money by making your own molds, I always think. Pop that to one side. We'll leave that to cure probably for about 12 hours, and then I'll demold it and I'll show you what it comes out like. Well, this is cured up now, so I can take this off, and the easiest way to get this off is, I think, just to break that open like that and pull it out. There we go. And all I need to do now is to trim off this bottom. And now this is the messiest way of doing it, by the way. The next way is, I think, probably the best way, but we will see which one you like the best. So this way just gives you larger stone, I always think. So what I'm going to do is just cut round this edge, And I use scissors because if I used a sharp knife, I'd end up cutting my fingers off. Okay, so then that's come off there. So I'll carry on and do that, and I will, literally all I'm going to be doing is going across it like this. So I've trimmed that right the way down now, and I've trimmed the excess off the back. So once I put that into that mould there, that should make a nice little insert. It's quite different, and it gives a very different feel to the one that I'm going to show you how to do now. This method of making a druzy, you need to start off with something like a polymer clay. And there's lots of polymer clays on the market, are really easy to get hold of. This is another really simple method to make a druzy. And all I'm going to do is roll this out over, I don't want it too thick, but again, I don't want it too thin. So that's really helpful, because I like to be as helpful as I possibly can. So what I've got is, I've got some lolly sticks that I've glued together. There's 3 lolly sticks, and that should be the ideal thickness, to be perfectly honest. And all I'll do is, I'll just roll this out until it gets to that thickness all the way through. And I want it quite an even thickness, and that's why I'm using the lolly sticks. Now, I want this druzy to fit in this mould, so I've got a cutter for it. I've got this, which is just the top of a plastic beer mug. That'll fit in there nicely. So if I cut one out there like that, of that size, then I know that that is going to be the right size for me. So that's about the right size for what I want to do. I'll just pop that on a baking sheet, and then I'll pop that in the oven and bake that for 15 minutes. And I'll just cut out a second one. And this one's going to be slightly different, because this one, rather than being flat, is going to actually be more of a bowl shape. Show you what I mean in a second. Just made that into a bowl shape, and what I'm going to do is bake these two now in the oven for 15 minutes, and then I'll come back and show you exactly what they look like and what we do next. So these have all baked and they're nice and hard. So the next thing that you need to do is you need to coat them with quite a liberal coat of wood glue, PVA glue, school glue, Elmer's glue, one of those types of glues really. So this type of white glue, and give it a really good coat all the way over, making sure that you get everywhere. And then what you need to do is good old Epsom salt. Sprinkle some Epsom salt onto this, push it down so it's making sure it's stuck in there. Knock it off, all the spare. So now you've got one that's completely covered in Epsom salts. The same here again. And then leave them overnight to dry. So I'm just going to leave them there like that. They'll dry overnight. To be honest, if you put them on a radiator, they'd probably be dry within about an hour. I'm going to leave this overnight. And then what we'll do is we'll do the next stage. What I've got here is I've got a tub, it's just a nice cream tub, of some really quite hot water. And all I'm going to do is pour the Epsom salts into this water and whisk it round until it just won't take any more. What you don't want is, you don't want it to be cloudy when you've finished. You just want it to all have dissolved and literally not take any more Epsom salts. Right, there we go. That I now know that that is enough, because it is starting to get a little bit cloudy. But it is starting to clear now. I'm beating it. Beat it, you naughty Epsom salts. What I now need to do is, I don't want to go and put my polymer clay pieces in there that I've glued the salt to yet, because if I put them in there, then the salt will just melt, and I don't want the salt to melt. It will just dissolve into this water. So what I will do is I will wait for this to cool right the way down, so it literally is just at room temperature. Then I will lay in these that have got the salt glued to them, leave it in there for a couple of days, and then what will happen is, as this starts to cool right down and evaporate off, the crystals will start to form on those crystals that you've glued to it. They're like little seed crystals, and that is what allows you to get the great crystals afterwards. Well, these have been sitting in here now for about 3 days, and I've left them in the kitchen, and that's why it's a bit echoey in here. So that's one of the actual crystals, and I think that's come out really, really well. As you can see, they're sparkling and they're quite a nice size. So that's the flat one, and this is the domed one. And again, that has got a nice lot of really good crystals going on the inside there. Now that would have had a lovely lot of crystals growing on there if I hadn't have took it out early, dropped it and then knocked all the crystals off there. But I'm not really too worried about that because I'm still going to make the mould out of it. So what I need to do now is allow these to dry before I cast them in the silicone, and then I'll show you how I do that and what the results are. Well, these have all dried now and they have come out so pretty. I'm so pleased with them. And as you can see, I'm not sure if the camera's picking up just how sparkly they are. They are very sparkly, both inside there. Well, so what we now need to do is make some silicone moulds with them. And that's what I'm going to show you how to do now. Well, they're easy already now to put the silicone on the top. And I've popped them in these little pots that I've made. And all I've done is I've just cut the top off a plastic beer mug so that I don't make too much of a mess, really, and have any silicone running all over the place. Now, before I go any further, what I will definitely be doing is spraying them with some mould release. Don't forget, I will add the links to everything that I'm using in today's video in the description below. I've got my silicone mixed up now, and I will list that in the description. And all I need to do now is just pour my silicone onto the mould. And this is why I've got it in a pot, because I know how messy I am and I will get it everywhere. And then if it flows out, that's absolutely fine. And this one I'll just be pouring over the top of it. Now, I will have to trim this one up, I'm aware of that, but I don't mind that, that's absolutely fine. And I'll show you how I do that once this is set. That one's nicely done, that one nice and level, so that we don't lose too much of that out of there. I mean, I know that we're not going to get the full outside of this, but it is the inside area here that I'm looking for on this one, where this one, this is what I'm looking for here. Well, these have all cured now, so it's just a case of taking them out of the actual moulds. And the crystals will break off. And the great thing is, I will reuse these crystals. I will just soak them in hot water. And then I will take out any bits of the silicone that are stuck to it after I've soaked it in hot water. And I can reuse them. And I shall reuse the bases as well that I've made. Now do this gently because you don't want to rip the silicone if you can help it. I mean, it is quite sturdy, but you know, it can still rip, and there will be some bits of salt embedded in it, but you'll just need to get those out as well. So there's one, and that's just a small one, so I don't want these tatty bits around the edge of it, so I'll just take those off. And this is the bigger one. Because this is flat, this one should come out fairly simply as well. And this one again, I will be trimming up around the edge. You can see that even with the salt out, that is still glistening quite a bit. And that's because that has picked up that shiny mould. Now, I don't want this rim around here where it's flat. So again, I will trim that off. It doesn't need to be a uniform shape because it is a geode after all, and they're not uniform shaped, so we want it to look as natural as possible. All I would do is I would pop that into that mould. So that's how I make druzy molds, and there's 3 different methods there. Oh, mess. I'm so messy. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a video next on how to use the druzy molds and what I do to get the best out of them. So check out that video. Don't forget, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future videos. Check out my members only area, and if you fancy, buy me a coffee. I really do appreciate it. Anybody that buys me a coffee between December and January, their names will go on the pressure pot that I'm buying, but everybody's name after that who don't go on the pressure pot will go onto the wall of fame in my new studio. I look forward to it. Thank you very much indeed. Enjoy your resin. Take care. Bye.